In this video, I'll show you all the best current Warhammer kits to use in all kinds of miniature-agnostic wargames, sci-fi and fantasy. You probably know I'm a big fan of miniatures-agnostic wargames. If you don't know what that means, miniatures-agnostic wargames are generally wargames that don't sell an affiliated line of miniatures to go with their games. Some games are just a rule book, right? Or just a download, and they expect you to figure out, what miniatures you're going to use to represent your forces on the battlefield. For some people, this is a freeing opportunity to try out models that they like but never have gotten a chance to buy, or to kit bash models out of all kinds of things, or whatever. And to some folks, this seems like a negative. As I've said many times before, any miniature wargame can be miniatures agnostic if you believe in yourself. You can play Space Marines in Warhammer 40,000 with cool 3D printed models from My Mini Factory if you want to, unless of course you go to an official Games Workshop tournament, I guess. Then they'll tell you that you can't, right? But if you just want to play with your friends and have a good time, you can use whatever models that you like to represent your forces, even in games that aren't generally considered miniatures agnostic. In last week's video, I talked about voting with your wallet, and I got some pushback on that. I suggested playing other games, like miniature-agnostic wargames, if you don't like Warhammer games these days, as opposed to, just complaining about Warhammer games and still buying them anyway. Anyone with a computer or even a smartphone can get access to miniature-agnostic wargames rules, either for free or for, pretty cheap. That's one of the many great things about those types of games. However, some people in the comments said that they only have access to Warhammer miniatures locally. Maybe it's the only miniatures that their friendly local game store sells, And some just simply stated that they prefer Warhammer figures and won't use anything else due to the quality or, the lore or whatever. And that, which I found surprising, honestly, also started to make me think, what are the best Games Workshop miniatures to use in other games, specifically miniatures-agnostic games? Yes, the whole idea to miniatures-agnostic games is that you can use whichever models you want, but sometimes it's a bit better to use slightly more generic, for lack of a better word, miniatures to be able to use those miniatures in all kinds of different wargames rules. You're not buying them just for one set of rules, you're buying them to potentially use them in a bunch of different miniature-agnostic rule sets. I'm going to show you a bunch of Games Workshop miniatures that would work well in other games, and I'll even mention the games here and there as well. Again, these are my opinions on what will work well from the GW catalog. If you have different opinions, please drop them down in the comments below for all of us to read. Just one quick note before we start. Nearly all Warhammer miniatures will work well with the games from one-page rules. Games like Grimdark Future and Age of Fantasy were initially designed to give you a new rule set to use with your existing Games Workshop miniatures. They even have a wiki that has suggestions for what Warhammer miniatures will work well with what one-page rules units in each of the games and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in any of the one-page rules games, then hit that wiki and find out what GW models to use. It'll be very easy. Starting with science fiction style games, some of my favorites being, of course, Space Weirdos, 5 Parsecs from Home, Stargrave, and Planet 28. One of my favorite sets to use with those is, of course, the old standby, regular old humans, right? The Cadian Shock Troops box is $52 retail and gets you 10 miniatures, which comes to about $5.20 each, strangely enough. They are pretty customizable as weapons and head options and all that kind of stuff are concerned. You also get both male and female head choices, and some with or without helmets and all that kind of stuff, so you can really make them look how you want to some degree. If you're looking for your humans to look a little bit more cohesive and also a bit gas masky. Then there's the Death Core of Krieg set, also $52 retail for 10 models, which again, $5.20 each. They're a little bit harder to kit bash as the heads are kind of attached to their chests via that, hose on their gas masks and all that kind of stuff. So it's harder to do head swaps and stuff. Not impossible, but harder. There's also the Kill Team version of the Krieg as opposed to the regular Warhammer version, but it's $65 for 10 models, which is $6.50 each, and they're a little bit more specific in their loadouts. Also, both of these kits are marked as temporarily sold out right now on the Games Workshop US website, but maybe your local store will still have them in stock. There's actually a bunch of Kill Team boxes that would work decently for sci-fi miniatures-agnostic games. Brood Brothers are cool models that are basically Cadian shock troops, but they got a little bit of that alien stank on them. You know what I mean? Like, they're being corrupted by the Gene Stealer cults, so they look different, mostly in the heads, but in some other places as well. There's also the Felgor Ravagers, if you like goat people, and Lord knows I do. The downside is that these boxes are, like I said, $65 retail for 10 models, so again, $6.50 each. And they don't give you quite as much customization since they're kind of designed for Kill Team's list-building rules. If you're looking for more kind of chaos-oriented models that are good for all kinds of miniature-agnostic sci-fi wargames, then the regular old Chaos Cultists are a decent deal. Well, I mean, for Games Workshop, right? Like at $52 retail for 10 models, $5.20 per model. I think they're all on one sprue, though, so probably not too many options. I'll admit that I don't own the cultists and I haven't built them, so let me know down in the comments below if you have and whether this just comes on one sprue or maybe it's 2 copies of one sprue. It was hard to tell from the website listing. There's also another Kill Team kit called the Blooded, which I have built and painted and stuff like that, and they're cool. But they're $75 for 12 models, which is $6.25 per model. Getting into some more weird and alien stuff, there's 2 good kits in the Tyranid line that would work well for miniatures-agnostic games. The Neurogaunts are 11 little melee-focused dudes for $42 retail, so $3.82 each. They'd be great alien opponents for solo and co-op games specifically, but you could use them for, versus type games as well if you wanted to build a force like that. And if you need range attacks, there's the Termagants, which are $45 retail for 11 models, $4.09 each. And they seem to have some kind of different weapon types so that you can really change up your crew loadout if you are, building a fun alien squad. Rounding out the alien squads, there's the Tau Pathfinder team, which, the Tau don't look that alien. I guess if you take their helmets off, they might, but otherwise they just look like bipedal dudes or whatever. At $45 retail for 10 Tau. Taus? 10 Taus? No, I think it's Tau. And 3 drones, so $3.46 each, which is the best deal we've had so far per model, right? Now note that this is not the Kill Team Pathfinders box, which has the same number of models, but is $65 for reasons. I guess those cards cost $20. There's also one of my favorites in this kind of alien group as well, the Hearthkin Warriors box from the League of Votan. $60 for 10 models, so $6 a model, a little expensive, but I really, really like these guys. I've already built and painted some for Space Weirdos myself. They're really customizable. You can swap out all kinds of different helmets and weapons and stuff like that. I'm a big fan. Last 2 for sci-fi, I swear. Can you tell that I generally prefer science fiction games to fantasy? Well, the Skitarii Rangers / Vanguard box is $58 retail and includes 10 models, so $5.80 each. Some really decent customization to these models via head swaps and also weapons tweaks and things like that. So you can build a really cool squad with them if you want to. In Horus Heresy, which is still going to be science fiction in this situation, there's the Solar Auxilla Las Rifle section for $79 retail. But you get 20 models coming to $5.95 each. Now, there's not a ton of customization. It's a lot of guys with Las Rifles, but there is certainly some customization. Plus, the heads are totally separate. They're not like built into the model when you build them. So simple head swaps of like putting heads on from different models and stuff like that's totally easy when you're kit bashing. Now, on to fantasy models. Like I said with sci-fi, you can use whatever models you want, but fantasy games generally follow certain themes and tropes, right? And I think that these models I'm about to list will mostly work best with common fantasy miniature agnostic games like Frostgrave, Forbidden Psalm, Verretwood, 1490 Doom, and others. I'm usually looking for humans with swords and shields, skeletons, ghosts, lizard people, and stuff like that when I'm getting into fantasy games, but you can certainly use other models as well. Speaking of humans, I love the newer Cities of Sigmar sculpts. The Free Guild Steel Helms for $58 retail gets you 10 figures, $5.80 per model, with some options, right? Like especially head options, which I, again, like I said, always do enjoy. If you want horses with your Free Guild, well, that's going to cost more. The Free Guild Cavaliers are 5 guys on heavily armored horses for $65 retail. That's $13 per guy and horse combo, right? But they're great looking models, I have to admit. They're really, really nice. Now, if you want like knights in shining armor type stuff, then it's probably best to head over to the Stormcast Eternals and grab a box of Vindicators, which are $60 retail for 10 models, $6 each. Sadly, they don't have any swords and shields, only spears and shields, and I don't know why that is. They do have other guys with big swords, but then those guys don't have shields, and so if you want something with shields, and I think shields look pretty cool on Knight, this is the way to go. If you're looking for lots of little monsters, especially to fight against in solo and co-op fantasy games, then you could do lizards or like goblin-adjacent models, right? For lizards, the Seraphon Skinks are 24 lizards for $45. That's $1.88 each, which is officially the best deal on this entire weird list. Now, that being said, they're very old models. You can tell by how much empty space is on the sprues in between each model. You can stick like a couple of fingers in between each of those spaces. Also, you can tell by the fact that it says 2002 on the copyright mark on those sprues. That means that these skinks can drink legally. I would not give them booze if I were you. In the goblin adjacent category, the Hobgrot Sliddas are pretty great too. $60 for 20 Hobgrots comes to $3 each. They're just neat little guys and they build really quickly. They don't have a lot of parts per model, right? Now, because of that, they're not too customizable without getting into like full-blown kit bashing territory. But that said, if you're comfortable with some kit bashing, like cutting and replacing weapons, and maybe even some like repositioning and kind of green stuff sculpting, on the arms or whatever, you could really make some crazy changes to these models to either build a really cool squad or, maybe some scarier and more impressive opponents for your solo and co-op games. The rest of this fantasy list is clearly in spoopy territory, undead and ghosts and whatnot. The Night Haunts are full of great models, and the best for miniature agnostic games, as far as I'm concerned, are the Chainrasp Hordes and the Bladegeist Revenants. Now, the Chainrasp Hordes are little guys, right? $45 retail for 10 ghosts, which is $4.50 each. But they build really fast and are cool, kind of like the expressive sculpts to some degree. Now, they're not very customizable, again, but unless you clip and do a bunch of stuff like that, to be honest. But the Bladegeist Revenants are $58 retail for 10 models. That's $5.80 each. But they are like bigger ghosts, and they're also all posed like really kind of crazy. If you look at them in a group, it looks like they've all lost control of their swords and they're all just flailing around, but they're pretty cool looking models. If you are looking for like physical undead, skeletons and zombies and whatnot that you can poke if you wanted to or whatever, I guess, then there's the Deadwalker zombies, which are $60 for 20 zombies, which is $3 each. The benefit with these zombies, again, is that they build super quickly, but again, they're not particularly customizable. Then there's the Death Rattle Skeletons, which they made a box of Death Rattle Skeletons like 4 or 5 years ago. I know, I swear I own one. I think it's in my basement. They came out right around the same time as Cursed City, but it was a separate box and it wasn't the same sculpts that were in Cursed City, I swear. But now they're redoing it for some reason. Now, this new box of Death Rattle Skeletons is going to be released on, I think, Saturday, the day after this goes live. So you'll be able to get them real soon, within a day, or otherwise they'll be in stock. They're great skellies, right? And for $62.50 for 20 of them, that comes to about $3.13 each, which isn't terrible. Your local shops may still have one of the old boxes. Lastly, a pair of my favorite models Games Workshop has ever done, which are old, but still awesome. I talked about these in a video recently, like within the last year, where I mentioned that I have a tendency to buy these models and many other models from Games Workshop over and over again whenever I find them in stores like that. Pachow. And it included the Necromancer, which is an iconic sculpt, right? And I think it will work well in so many different fantasy games, kind of obviously. And then, of course, there's also the White King, who is also a great sculpt, maybe not just as iconic as the Necromancer, in my opinion. Both of these models are still only $19 each, which when compared to many other GW single figures is actually a strangely good deal. So there you go. If you don't want to try miniature-agnostic games because you can't leave the models of Games Workshop behind, now you have a bunch of Warhammer models that will work in tons of miniature-agnostic games. What did I miss? It's a big selection that they have, right, over there at Games Workshop, so I'm sure that I missed something, right, that'll work well in miniature-agnostic games. Let us all know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, some depressmentation of the like button would be appreciated. It always helps the channel as well. And also while you're down there, if you want to see more videos like this every single Friday, click the subscribe button. It's free. Thanks for watching.